Hi everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and you're listening to We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're looking for a new show to binge or wanting to revisit an old classic, let us be your guide through the infinite list of TV shows.
So come join us every Friday as we discuss the pilot for a TV show while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storylines.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, where your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello everyone, welcome back to our pod.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going.
It's going good.
What's been going on with you?
Just work, kind of getting back into the groove of things, getting ready to go back out on a vacation.
Yeah, Anna gets to go on another vacation.
I know. This one was kind of a random one that came up. A friend of ours, Karen, who's a sorority sister of mine, her daughter and her daughter's best friend wanted to go on a senior trip together. They didn't want to go on like the school senior trip.
Yeah.
They just, but none of the other parents could go and take the time off. So she had messaged me and was like, do you think you could go on this trip and, figure out? And so I managed to get us all a good deal on Royal because of my status and stuff. So going on a trip, leaving tomorrow around noon and around 2, and then we leave Friday, and it's a quick 5-night cruise, so we'll be back Thursday, so it's not even a full week. But yep, going on another vacay. I needed a vacation from our vacation, which was actually really true. I mean, I was spent.
She needs a vacation away from me, is what she's trying to say.
No, that's not true. Because
I'm just kidding.
I've actually been looking at other cruises that we could maybe take, but there's so many that they're not that many short ones.
Yeah.
And particularly near us, they're all 5 or 7 nights. I know it's hard for them to do cruises out of New Orleans or Galveston that are just 3 or 4 nights because it takes like a whole day. But
it's easier when it's out of Miami.
Yeah. So that's the tough thing.
Yeah. I'm gonna be holding down the fort, editing episodes, getting episodes ready for our upcoming recordings and our themes for the next month. I will be getting that ready, and I'll be hanging out at home. And I'll probably be watching some movies that I know you really won't be interested in watching, some niche horror movies. So what are some TV shows that we are currently watching? I know we're currently watching The Testaments, which is really good.
Oh my God, it stresses me out. We're watching shows that are so random.
Yeah.
So we're watching The Testaments, which of course is part of The Handmaid's Tale story. We also just finished Running Point, which
so good.
We did that series in this pod a few months ago.
Yep, February.
And then we are also watching, it just slipped my head. Euphoria. Yeah, Euphoria. So that one has been just stressing me out. It's crazy how each of those 3 seasons have been different. I mean, obviously now they are technically adults. It's 5 years post high school, probably because it's been so long. But it just has shown how each of the characters have kind of expanded from their high school life until their now early adulthood life, and how chaotic and crazy that is, just kind of their continuum of high school. So that has been really interesting. I will also say that I have since discovered on Hulu that Law and Order, the OG Law and Order, has been added, and it's OG Law and Order that has gone back to season 1. Peacock has Law and Order because it was originally an NBC show, but it only went back. I'm going to make it up because I haven't looked at Peacock like lately. It had Law and Order, but only back to like season 13 or something. Right. It didn't have like all those really older seasons that were part of my core memory of Law and Order. So I have, while you have been at work, I will pop on a season and just let it run straight through.
all of your yawns, or I tried my best to cut all of your yawns.
So now you have a good spot of where you can listen, and now you knew.
No, I have to listen to the entire episode. That's how editing goes.
Okay. Well, anyway, so that has been really fun for me to watch some really, really old episodes of Law and Order that I love. So that's been about it. Yeah, we had Mother's Day meals with the parentals, and I got to FaceTime Ollie, so that was good, my little boo. But yeah, I've been in another spring cleaning, summer cleaning mode of donating things, trashing things, just trying to clean up the house and make it nice and fresh for summer. Gardening, all the household things.
All the things.
Well,
that's cool. All right, so we are here to continuing our theme for this month, which is Irish set TV shows. We have a really cool show today that I don't think is super popular. So hopefully this episode will kind of bring more awareness to this mini series that we were kind of immediately drawn into. When I was looking at the list of Irish TV shows, I was just like, okay, let me try to get some variety in here. We kind of have like Dairy Girls is kind of our sitcom, and then we kind of have like a dark comedy coming up, and then we kind of have like a mix of like comedy and drama, and I was like, we need to find like a straight up like drama, like a straight up, there's nothing funny about this show. Like I'm sure there's going to be some dark humor at some point, because how can you not have some humor to a show at some point? But the show is very serious. When I read the plot line for it, it sounded really interesting.
Oh yeah.
And just the name of the show in general just kind of caught my eye, and it's called The Woman in the Wall. It's an Irish miniseries, and it's only like miniseries, one season, I think 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And we watched the first episode. We were immediately drawn into it. Unfortunately, we watched it like right before vacation, right before you were still, when we watched this, because you got to remember, we watched these first 2 shows, Dairy Girls and Woman in the Wall. That was when we were doing it for March. And so we watched these
a while ago,
and it was right before you were finishing your work travel. So we watched it and then immediately went into work travel mode and then preparing for our trip to Europe. So we haven't been able to finish it, but we have every intention to, because
we only have 5 episodes left.
It was very interesting. And then we just watched our next Irish show, which we both loved and we want to keep watching. So we picked some good shows for this month.
And why I want to finish it is we do have a little bit of a bad habit of where we will start something, maybe even watch a whole season, and then we will fall off of it.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting us to be better about either finishing a season or a series. And I know it's hard with what we're doing with this podcast, because we keep having to watch and then record and then find new things, or, go back to old favorites or whatever. But this one would definitely be easy to finish because it's only 6 episodes.
Right. So definitely when you come back from your cruise, we definitely have every intention of finishing this and the other Irish show that we're going to be doing later this month that we both got really into.
Yes.
Another Lisa McGee show that if you know who Lisa McGee is, she created Dairy Girls and her newest show on Netflix, which that's enough clues to tell you what show that is. All right, so we are doing today is a mini series called The Woman in the Wall, and like I said, we were just the title alone, I was like, okay, that's an interesting title for a TV show. And then when I read the plot summary for it, I was just like, oh, we're watching this. I was like, this sounds really good. Got a great cast. We'll get into all that. But for now, Anna's going to do what she always does and give us some episode and series information.
All right. The Woman in the Wall, back to life. The Woman in the Wall was an Irish mystery drama miniseries that aired on the UK's BBC One from August 27th to September 24th, 2023, and has a total of just 6 episodes. The series was created by Joe Murtaugh. Murtaugh was previously a writer for movies and TV shows such as American Animals, Calm with Horses, and Gangs of London. The Woman in the Wall centers around Lorna, who wakes up one morning and finds a dead woman in her house. Lorna has a history of trauma-based sleepwalking that stretches back to her time spent in one of Ireland's controversial Magdalene asylums or laundries, facilities that were run by the Roman Catholic Church that housed fallen women. The series stars Ruth Wilson, who I love, as Lorna Brady, a troubled woman who frequently sleepwalks. Abby Fitz, who plays young Lorna. Daryl McCormack as Detective Coleman Akande, a detective from Dublin sent to Kilkenure. Simon Delaney as Sergeant Aidan Massey. Philippa Dunn as Nymph. Mark Huberman as Michael Kearney. Hilda Faye as Amy Kane. Frances Tamelty as Sister Eileen. Dermot Crowley as James Coyle. Killian Lenigan as Connor Skelly. And
I'm going to say
Cammy Farron as Clements. The miniseries was mostly met with positive reviews and received several nominations, including 5 Irish Film and TV Awards, and won 3 Royal Television Society of Northern Ireland Awards, including Best Actress for Ruth Wilson and Best Actor for Daryl McCormack. You can currently watch the entire series on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, so the plot, kind of like the episode and series information for some of these shows, there really wasn't a lot of information about it. A lot of them were short-lived, so there really wasn't a lot of like hype. It's not like Dairy Girls that lasted for however many seasons and then became a cult classic. We're kind of picking some niche selections this month, so that's why there wasn't a whole lot of episode and series information. Also, I didn't want to give too much away. It seems like there's going to be a lot of twists and turns for this TV show, so I kind of just decided to make it a little short. But that kind of leads us into, I kind of wasn't completely educated on the Magdalene asylums or laundries. I didn't really know what those were. But just in case you want to know what they are, I have a little bit of
history.
A little bit of history. So Catholic-run, state-involved institutions that confined over 10,000 women and girls from 1992 to 1996 for perceived moral failings. That's the in quotes. Survivors suffered brutal physical, psychological abuse, and forced unpaid labor, which no surprise to anyone, really leading to a 2014 state apology and compensation. The scandal revealed systemic abuse, illegal detention, and a culture of shame. Sounds a little bit like the Testaments. A little bit like the Handmaid's Tale, if you ask me.
They're going to the colonies.
So yeah, these women were forced into, like unwed mothers, orphans. I mean, like, honestly, like, what kind of the mentally disabled, which there's a long line of abuse from kids. I mean, like, there was that whole, I think it was Geraldo Rivera who exposed that state hospital that basically parents were just dropping off their mentally disabled kids, leaving them, and then they were just kind of left with, like, 100 patients to one orderly kind of thing, and the amount of neglect and abandonment and abuse that they suffered was just unimaginable. And, I mean, it says victims of rape. So people that were, that accused people, that women that accused men of raping them, instead of the men being punished, they were sent to these for basically like failing themselves and failing their families, which is just heart-wrenching when you like really sit there and sit and think about it.
Well, that was kind of like on the Testaments.
Yeah.
When Huldah wanted to report the dad, and not her dad, but someone else's dad, and she got admonished for it. Like, what are you doing? Why are you saying these things? We're going to forget it. And yeah, that was nuts.
So yeah, that's just they were compensated a total of the 814 survivors. So some of these women died while in care of these laundries. They were put in unmarked graves on the church site, which is also just heart-wrenching. These parents just completely abandoned their kids and completely abandoned their families and just kind of left them. Sorry to get really dark, but I mean, this is a really dark show. So I mean, like, this isn't going to be we're not going to be having we're not going to be telling a whole lot of fun stories on this. But yeah, this is a pretty heavy show. So just kind of like a little bit of a, maybe not a trigger warning, but just kind of just a warning in general. The show seems like it's going to be really intense.
Oh, very heavy.
There's going to be, there are flashbacks to Lorna about her past, about being sent away to this laundry. And there's this whole kind of subplot with the survivors of the laundry who feel that they weren't, the justice wasn't really brought, like they were kind of, I mean, compensating is a nice way of saying they were given hush money. And I mean, that's kind of the whole thing, is like they don't want the money. They want some of these people to face consequences. The people that ran these laundries, the nuns that abused them, the nuns that treated them with like essentially like slaves, unpaid labor. That's what a slave is. And, basically all these other people, some of these women did not survive, and it's very sad. And like I said, the show's going to be very heavy, so if that's not the kind of show that you want to watch, I completely understand. You can listen to the plot summary once we talk about it, and if that interests you enough, then, like we said, it's on Paramount Plus. It's only 6 episodes. So now that I've talked about that, this whole thing is just about one of the biggest scandals in Irish history. And maybe, I mean, like, these convents weren't just in Ireland, but this was kind of like where like the kind of the most attention got for these laundries and convents. There were plenty of these, I think they were called like reform schools in the United States, where these parents were just kind of shipping their kids off to these places where they were also abused psychologically and physically. So we're going to be kind of talking about some of the biggest scandals that either happened in our lives or scandals that really kind of stuck out to us. They can be big scandals, little scandals. They don't have to be intense like the laundries, just scandals that, just the very definition of a scandal is very broad. So we can kind of just talk about the ones that we remember and the ones that stuck out to us. So what's one? Do you have one off the top of your head? I've listed a few.
Okay. And I did want to talk about the Irish laundries in the sense of just how it was probably very normalized. Yeah. I mean, I mean, I've talked a little bit about my own mother who grew up in South America. She went to Catholic school, had a very strict kind of education upbringing, and per usual mother-daughter relationships, we struggled when I was a teen, and really just not because I was doing anything super bad, but like my mom perceived what I was doing as super bad. She actually threatened to send me to a convent. Obviously, I don't think it was like, slave labor and stuff, but, my dad obviously intervened and was like, no, that is not how we resolve things. And I think she just wanted a even more strict than my mom was with me, even though I've also talked about how kind of liberal my mom was. But so when we were learning more about this, I've always been very curious as to my parents' upbringing in their countries. I don't know a lot about it. It was nothing we ever talked about growing up. It was just something we did not do. But I do wonder if that was something that was very normalized, particularly to my mom, that was an acceptable thing to do. Yeah. It was like you just shipped your kid off of someone who you perceived was not behaving correctly or was damaged in some way that you just didn't want to, deal with them or manage them. So again, that's a little bit of what struck me about this show, was like, it always just made me wonder about how my parents grew up. Some of the biggest scandals, I will talk about one of my very first ones as kind of a junior high student. So this was a really funny one, was we were coming back from a school trip, and we stopped and we pulled into the parking lot of where the Chuck E. Cheese was on the, like, kind of near where I grew up. Actually, I worked there when I was in high school. And it was discovered that a bunch of kids on our school field trip in 8th grade brought beer. And I remember they got in trouble. I don't think they got expelled or suspended. I think they got detention, but it was kind of one of my first experiences with like a scandal of some sort. Yeah. I remember going, oh, the boys brought alcohol on the trip. It was just, everyone was like, oh my gosh, like, you don't do that. And then like a year later, we were in high school, like drinking and going out. So that was kind of funny. But probably one of the biggest scandals that I really remember, I mean, there were probably a lot during my lifetime, Watergate. I was like 3 or something when Watergate happened. But probably one of the biggest ones, and this was particularly as a female, as a young college student myself, was the Clinton Lewinsky.
I have that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. I mean, how can you not? It was the 90s.
Yeah. And I was in college, and, there was a lot of obviously like what defines sex, what defines power, harassment, consent. And so that to me was also a big lesson as a female in the workplace. Because yes, you could easily say she was an adult. She was in her 20s. She consented to whatever they did. She likely didn't technically say no, but did she have the power to say no? I mean, you're obviously talking about the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world at the time. So, it was a big learning lesson for me about expectations in the workplace and decisions I would make about dating a colleague or a boss or the relationships I had in the workplace. And they were lessons I really did take with me. I mean, I remember in my first teaching job, all the students, I knew I was single. They knew I was not married. They all wanted me to date one of the coaches and one of the PE teachers. And I was like, absolutely not. I mean, it was nothing against him. But one, I also didn't want the students to be able to gossip about us. And also, if it didn't work out, I didn't want to have to look at him every day. So it was little notes like that really taught me a lot about what I wanted to do. Also in my job now, obviously I work from home and I have worked from home. I did work in an office for a little bit, but I have always been the person that I have never wanted to dip the pen in the company ink. I just have always tried to maintain very professional relationships. I have had friends as colleagues, but it was always very work related. It was never like, we're going to go hang, outside of work. Yeah. Again, I'm remote, so it's hard to do that. But, I think you are also very much like that as well. You don't really hang out with anyone from work outside of work. So
not anymore. Yeah,
you did a little bit when you were single and you were living with, the guys. But again, I still, we had Shocktober's and stuff, but again, it was very minimal. I mean, they might have come over.
That was kind of the end of it though. Like once I kind of went on to restaurant management, I really kind of learned how to separate work and personal. And ever since then, I'm going to go ahead and say I have a whole lot less drama in my life ever since I kind of stopped.
Because they're not
they're
not intermingling. You're not. You don't know their personal stuff that also comes up into work. I mean, I just remember when we first met. Some of the cooks were dating some of the bartenders, and it was craziness.
It was messy.
I mean, I remember. I don't want to say the name, but someone actually called and texted me about it. And I'm like, I don't know anything. Why are you messaging me? And so, it was, I can see how it gets crazy. So that to me, I will just say the Clinton Lewinsky was really one of the first that I really paid attention to. That I was like, wow, like hear this, who really knows what happened except for the two of them. But it was a big lesson in where you draw the line in your relationships in the workplace. Yeah. And it was a big learning lesson for me. What about you?
So we've talked about this before. There is a little bit of an age gap between us. So the first two really big scandals that I remember kind of being all over the place and being all over the news. An easy one was Milli Vanilli.
Oh, gosh,
that whole controversy. Not only were they caught, because it's not uncommon for artists to lip sync while they're on stage, but it was the fact that these two did not sing any of it. It was not them singing at all. It was two other people singing their entire album.
And hadn't they won Best New Artist?
Yes.
Yeah.
They were winning awards. They were getting all this attention. And I mean, like, some of their songs were really good, and it was just kind of like you kind of realized that it wasn't them singing, and there was this whole controversy behind it. I didn't fully understand it at the time because I was so young, because I was like, don't artists do this all the time? But then it was like, no, it's not them singing at all. And I was like, oh, okay, okay. There was a not docuseries, but there was like a movie kind of made about it. I never saw it. It came out sometime in fairly recent history. Maybe I'm like way off on when it came out, but that they didn't really have any control over it, and they were just kind of told what to do. But of course, because they're the face of it, they kind of got the brunt of it. And another one, I mean, it's hard not to talk about scandals and not talk about Kerrigan Harding. I mean, Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. That whole thing, and the, her getting hit with the lead pipe, and the why, which was
why
just
me?
Parodied to no end, especially on In Living Color, and that whole thing. And then, kind of watching I, Tanya, and watching documentaries about it, kind of learning the full story. It's always interesting because in the moment, especially back in the 90s when we didn't have social media, we didn't have all of these things to kind of give us the full story. We were kind of just told the version that was told to us on the news or told to us in interviews from other people. We were never really told like the whole story. Kind of finding out that like Tanya Harding, it wasn't like Tanya Harding hired this person. I don't know the whole story. I'm never going to claim I know the whole story, but they really kind of, in present time, they've kind of made it that like Tanya Harding wasn't really like the mastermind behind all of it.
I don't think she was the mastermind, but she was definitely involved.
Oh, she was definitely involved. That's always been the case. But that was one that, like, of course, like I said, I grew up in the 90s, and it was, every joke was Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan. Every joke was Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton.
Oh, me and my roommate, Pam, who's blonde and I'm brunette, we dressed up as Tanya and Nancy for Halloween for a party one year.
Cancel Anna.
Yeah, I had like a knee brace on. She was actually carrying around like a crowbar. I mean, we made fun of it. But, what those lessons were, like you just said, in watching like post documentaries or miniseries or movies that have been made about it, is like kind of what happens and what goes on, particularly with the women and female Olympians and the pressure and the coaches. I mean, we could go on about gymnastics and the medical doctors, which we just talked about on the Testaments. But I mean, again, during these times of ours, particularly in the 90s, we didn't have social media. We didn't have news access. We saw whatever it was on the 3 networks that were on for 30 minutes.
Or some tabloid magazine.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, we thought it was funny, but there was a lot of stuff going on that we didn't know at that time. So it's kind of different in how we see scandals today versus 30 years ago.
Do you have any more off the top of your head?
I don't, but
okay. So I have one that, like, I hate saying it's like my favorite scandal because that's a really weird thing to say, but it's I don't want to say it's relatively harmless, but it's not as serious as the other ones that we're talking about.
Okay.
It was also overshadowed by the O.J. Simpson trial, so not a lot of people know about it.
Oh.
So I think it was made in 2000, a movie called Cheaters came out. And not the TV show, but a movie called Cheaters came out, and it was about the Steinmetz High School academic decathlon cheating scandal.
Oh, okay.
So there was this inner city high school in Chicago called Steinmetz High School, and they were, it's a very typical public school. It was all of the funding went to sports. Nothing really went to academics.
Well, that's crazy.
And so there was they had the academic bowl, or the bowl, however you want to call it, the academic decathlon, where kind of like the smartest kids in the school compete in like quiz bowls. They take tests, they do essays, they do speeches and stuff like that. And Steinmetz was up against Whitney Young, who Whitney Young is like this famous magnet school. Bill Gates has like funded it and stuff like that. Like, it was this really big deal. They placed first, second, or third in the national competition every year. And the school, they were just kind of tired of it because they were like, well, Whitney Young is a quote-unquote public school, but they get all this funding, they get all of this access. The academic decathlon headquarters was stationed at Whitney Young, so it was like, I think this school, Steinmetz, was really tired of certain schools and certain people getting all of these advantages, and they were kind of always getting like the shit end of the stick. So what happened, no one really knows exactly how it happened, but one of the Steinmetz academic decathlon students got their hands on the practical exam, the exam for the state academic decathlon competition. No one really knows how they got their hands on it. In the movie, so the movie came out in 2000. It starred Jeff Daniels and Jenna Malone, who we love both of them, and they spent all night. They placed fifth in the in like the district, like the regional competition. So they kind of skated their way to the state competition. And they had one of the academic decathlon students get a fake ID and pose as a judge. I mean, this was like a huge deal. They took the exam. They all did great, but it was also, they knew the questions from the exam were going to be in the quiz bowl, and so one of the students had like signals for A, B, C, or D. When the students were, I have the movie on DVD. We must watch it one day.
Oh yeah, I'm down.
And like the one of the girls, Jenna Malone's character, had like all of these signals for A, B, C, or D because she knew all the answers. And so they dominated. They won all these medals. Of course, Whitney Young were immediately like, we need to investigate this because we didn't win. And so it kind of became this whole thing. It's like, yes, they cheated, but it was also like, even if they hadn't cheated, they would have had to deal with this anyway because they were investigated by the academic decathlon. Whether they cheated or not, it was because they came from an inner city school. They were like, how did y'all win? Like, right. And so instead of celebrating, which I'm going to keep saying they did cheat, so they were in the wrong, but it was also kind of this whole moral dilemma of like, well, Whitney Young has all these unfair advantages, so why can't we have these unfair advantages? Right. Like, it was kind of this whole moral dilemma. I keep saying moral dilemma, but that's kind of what it is. It's like, you know, if we didn't come from an inner city school, if we didn't have these Polish surnames, and if we weren't first generation Americans, y'all wouldn't be questioning us in the first place.
It's kind of like the movie Stand and Deliver.
Exactly.
And they didn't cheat. They all passed.
They took inspiration from Stand and Deliver. One of the kids quoted that movie and saying, if we didn't, instead of saying Spanish surnames, if we didn't have Polish surnames and come from bad homes, we would never be questioned in the first place. And retaking the test is the admission of guilt. So, that was Edward James Olmos's. Yeah. He was like, well, if we retake the test and then we say we cheated, and they watched Stand and Deliver, Jeff Daniels says, that's our angle. Like, you know, if we say we retake it, I mean, eventually it found out that they cheated. One of the kids ended up confessing. One of the other kids who felt like he was left out of the whole thing kind of ratted them out, and it was just this whole mess. And like I said, it was all taking place during the Bronco chase, so it was like completely overshadowed.
For 2 years.
No one really remembers it. You could go online and look up Steinmetz cheating scandal. There's maybe like 2 or 3 articles about it. It's really not that well known, and since all of the kids were minors, I think a lot of them were protected, and kind of like not a lot of information was released. But to me, it is just everything that America is about, and like it kind of makes the whole thing about like Jeff Daniels kind of has this monologue with one of the students who's like really hesitant on cheating, and he's just like, look, we're all taught that cheaters don't win, cheaters never prosper. That's not life. The fact of the matter is, cheaters do win, cheaters do prosper. Oh. He was like, do you think Bill Gates is sending his kid to a public school? He's like, no. There's like, do you think like any of these like rich people are sending their kids to public schools? It's like, no, they're sending them to private schools. When someone from Microsoft stole information from Apple and gave it to Bill Gates, you think they fired him? No, they probably promoted him. Like, it was, you know, it's just this whole thing with like the U.S. in general, where it's like cheaters do win, cheaters do prosper. And the whole kind of takeaway from the show is like Jenna Malone kind of has like a monologue at the end where she narrates, and she's just like, you know, we all went off and did our own thing. We all went off and went to college. her character was like, I want to become a teacher, and if I ever catch a kid cheating, I'm going to turn him in, because if he can get past me, he's going to make it in life. Like,
right.
And that's, and it's also kind of heartbreaking because these were kids, and all they wanted to do was have their moment in the spotlight and feel validated for being smart and for being these kids that were in this school that was, metal detectors, and there was a lot of gangs and crime, and all they wanted to do was just have their moment in the spotlight. And they kind of went the wrong way about it, but in the end, it was like they were kids, and like they were just completely torn apart by the media, and it's all just kind of a question of, what do you consider cheating? What do you consider, it's one of the most fascinating stories I've ever heard in my life, because like I said, it's like this school, after that, the Academic Decathlon changed their headquarters location. Whitney Young did not come in first place in nationals that year, and they have not really placed that much since then. So it's like, were they given unfair advantages in the first place? It's like, were they already given the quiz? Did they already have the material and they knew what was going to be in the Academic Decathlon? Like, you kind of start asking these questions, and it's like, yeah, sorry, I kind of went off on a little tangent, but it's just like, it was kind of like my first introduction to true crime. And so I kind of just became fascinated with it. And at the time, internet was very limited. I think there was like one article about it online at the time. And yeah, so that's probably I hate saying favorite scandal because that sounds weird, but the most interesting kind of scandal also, because when it came out, when that movie came out, I was in high school. We had an academic decathlon. I went to a public school where there wasn't a lot of funding for academics. It all kind of went to sports, and the academics and the arts were really kind of ignored. So we didn't have metal detectors and crime and gangs and stuff, but I found it to be very relatable.
So leaning into the two that you just mentioned, that and the Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan, and a couple of things you just mentioned actually leaned me into the ones I'm going to talk about real quick.
Go for it.
So we've talked about sports, and you've talked about the question of what is cheating and the use of technology. And these three relate to all of those. Okay. So I have Saints Bountygate, Patriots Deflategate,
yeah,
and then the Houston Astros camera and the signals. So Saints Bountygate was the scandal with the New Orleans Saints that supposedly the players had bounties on quarterbacks, and there were supposedly Excel sheets, and players would get paid by if they caused like injuries or harm to players. None of it was technically ever proven. Roger Goodell was like, supposedly there's this stuff. But in a game where the actual point is to like sack the quarterback and not allow him to make plays, this one was really questionable that it became such a big thing. We lost, I think, draft picks. Our defense coach and our head coach were not allowed to coach for like either 3 or 6 games. And it brought actually a lot of questions to our success during those seasons. And I hated that for our team because we had just come off winning a Super Bowl. Yeah. This was a couple years later.
Okay.
But
I think I remember this.
Yeah. So that one was kind of one of the sports ones that I first remember. Then you had the New England Patriots Deflategate, where it was discovered, and this was actually discovered, that the New England Patriots were slightly deflating footballs. Like supposedly NFL footballs are supposed to be at a certain PMI or whatever you call it, pressure, inflated for games. And so your hands, I guess, as a quarterback can hold the football at a certain way. Well, I guess Tom Brady was like, well, I actually like the footballs a little bit less inflated so my hands can grip them better, so I can be able to launch them and throw them either further, faster, harder, whatever it was that he wanted. And teams, I guess, during a game, dozens of balls are used, and so they probably change hands throughout the game into these big bins. And other quarterbacks were noticing that the balls were not at the correct PMI or whatever. PSI pressure. Yeah. And so it was discovered that the Patriots were deflating their footballs for Tom Brady for him to have this advantage. Again, it's Tom Brady, and you look back and you're like, he's freaking Tom Brady. He's a good quarterback. Did that really give him an edge? Maybe. I mean, it probably helped him in some way, but would he have had a bad game otherwise? You just never know. And then the last one is the use of real actual technology helping a team. So around 17 and 18, which is crazy because this was, I think, the year that the Astros were in the World Series when we visited one of my schools. I used to have Houston in my territory. The center field camera for the Houston Astros it was either at that time Enron Field or Minute Maid Field, I don't know what it's called today, was apparently directly aimed at the opposing, it's always aimed at the catcher. So the catcher in baseball oftentimes gives hand signals to the pitcher of what kind of pitch to throw. Fastball, curveball, splitter, whatever it might be. Well, the Houston Astros center field camera was catching those signals. They were looking at the catcher using their center field camera, zooming in on the catcher's crotch. So let's say you're the catcher.
Oh, gotcha.
The camera was looking at him giving signals. Yep. Putting your finger down or across or whatever he was doing with his hands, and relaying those signals to someone with sound. So at baseball games, there's lots of music and thunder and clapping and booming. Well, the Houston Astros, again, I don't know a lot about baseball games and their management on the field and the entertainment and stuff. Yeah. But they were using some sort of like booming sound, like making it sound like trash cans, like boom, boom, like just again, trying to fake hype up the crowd.
Okay.
Well, apparently it was also code to the players of what pitches were coming. So they were using certain boom sounds to notify the batters of what pitches were coming from the pitcher.
Okay.
So like one boom would be a fastball. 2 booms would be a splitter.
Gotcha.
3 booms would be a curveball or whatever it was. And it was discovered by someone, a viewer, going, wow, like every time there's 1 boom, it's a fastball. Every time it's 2 booms, it's a curveball. Every time it's 3 booms, it's a splitter or whatever their pitches were.
Yeah.
And they brought it to the attention of Major League Baseball. And I think the Astros denied it or denied having anything to do with it. But it was when you started watching and listening, it was pretty undeniable that was what was happening. And I don't know what has since happened to the center field cameras, if it's now like, or any of the camera, cinematographers or cameramen or whatever they're called, who are in charge of the cameras. But I do now wonder if there's not like, team like watching of the cameras, like if there's like a representative from the opposing team working with those cameramen now. But that was a pretty recent use of technology, of the cameras, of the sound system, probably relayed to players in some way. And so, those were the 3 that I think of recent years have come into play. And I'm sure there will be more. I think we've also said in cheating, particularly since that's what you just talked about.
Yeah.
there's always going to be a new way of cheating.
Right.
I mean, we could get here on a tangent about AI, like how that has evolved cheating in school and whatnot. So I just wanted to talk about those because as you were talking about Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan and then the use of technology, I was like, oh, we've had all these other sports ones and including the use of technology. So, yeah.
And then I will do one more because that made me kind of going back and forth. It made me think of a movie we watched recently, and it was the Press Your Luck scandal.
Ooh, yes.
Because that's a good one.
That was good. Price is Right, the money. But Press Your Luck was good because that was hard.
Press Your Luck was more of a scandal. I would say the Price is Right one is a little bit more of a... I don't know if that's so much of a scandal because all of the information you could find.
You could watch it.
But the thing with Press Your Luck was that everyone thought that the lighting system was randomized, but this one guy, Michael Larson, realized that it's one of 5 random sequences. Random, I put in quotes. It's one of 5 sequences, and when he knew when to say stop, and he knew when to. He ended up winning a record-breaking over $100,000, which is close to $350,000 today.
And on Press Your Luck, that was like impossible. Like no one ever won.
You would win what, like 10 grand or something like that?
10K was the most.
Yeah,
it was. When we watched it, I was like, he had to have really been watching the lights, but I was like, that never happened on that show.
Yeah, and he kind of more or less conned his way. He was someone that was Michael Larson was trying to always get into these get rich quick schemes. He was in a lot of debt. He was trying to pay off different people, and he was obsessed with game shows, and he was always trying to get on game shows. And he figured out the Press Your Luck, kind of like the secret behind Press Your Luck, that it's not randomized. It's that it's one out of there are 5 different sequences, and the people that were doing the show, they were just like, no one's ever gonna figure this out. Who's gonna sit at home and really try and figure this out? And it's like, well, Michael Larson did, and I don't think he actually got the money. I think that they, or maybe he did and they didn't figure out until later that he cheated or something like that, because it was like 10 years later where he kind of like fled and kind of ended up. They have The Luckiest Man in America with Paul Walter Hauser, who was so great in that movie. It was such a good movie. I think we watched it once, and it was really good.
Can I talk real quick about one little thing?
Okay, we're good.
All right. So speaking of that and technology that was there, so it wasn't really a scandal. He just totally figured out the system. I think I've told this story on the pod where there was a radio show contest about naming all the people in the We Are the World video. Mm-hmm. And I had actually recorded it on my VCR, and I called in and I had pulled up the video, and they were like, it's $100 for every person you can name in the video. And so I was like, Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones.
You had it like on pause.
Dan Aykroyd, Bette Midler, the Pointer Sister, Bruce Springsteen. I was just naming everyone that I knew. I mean, if you were an MTV girl in the 80s, you knew all of these artists because you were watching their videos. And I think I named like 30 plus people in the video. And the DJ was like, oh my God. Like I had just won like $3,000.
Yeah.
And he was like, thinking I would maybe name like 2 or 3, but I had named like 30 of them. And I remember he was like, I'm going to have to call you back because I don't know if we can really give you $3,000. And I think I'd mentioned this on the pod before. My mom actually really got involved because she was like, you won that money. I mean, that was a lot of money in the 1980s. Shit, that's a lot of money today.
Give me $3,000, I'll take it.
Yeah. And so I think the radio station manager ended up calling. I was like 14 or 15 at the time, and talked to my mom. They came to an agreement of $1,000.
Hey.
And I got to come and pick out anything I wanted in like the free album and cassette room. I probably walked out of there with like 25 albums and like 30 or 40 cassette tapes and my $1,000. So they were just like, take whatever you want, because they got all that shit replenished from like record stores and, you know, like studios and stuff. So, I mean, I came out with like this big stack of albums. My mom came with me because she had like a tote bag with all the cassettes and stuff. And
that's so funny.
But I do remember, like, I actually probably, if they would have said we can give you $200, I would have been happy, and shit, my mom probably would have been happy. But she was like, it was the principle of it. Again, my mom was really big on principles. You named 30 plus people. They said you would get $100 for each of them. And so I ended up with 1,000 and probably a shit ton of albums and cassettes. So that was one of my little scandals of actually using the video and just going, so and so. I was just naming off everyone on those podiums that were singing "We Are the World." So that was my own little scandal.
Well, now I can put that in the episode description. Anna talks about her own scandal.
We Are the World.
Her own We Are the World scandal.
Exactly. All right,
let's get into this plot summary.
Let's do it.
All right, Woman in the Wall plot summary. Lorna Brady slowly regains consciousness in the middle of a rural road. She is wearing a white nightgown and is barefoot. The story is set in the town of Kilkenny, a fictional and quaint Irish town where Lorna resides. When she comes back home, Lorna is shocked to find a knife plastered into a she stabbed the knife into a wall, and it's into a portrait of Jesus. And as soon as she removes it, water is sprayed through a hole. The knife has damaged a pipe. Lorna keeps her tools in a back room lit by a red light. She seems afraid of this room and does not seem to notice that an unopened box is on the table. Lorna works as a seamstress in a nearby shop. She is skilled at her craft but doesn't really like talking to customers. While buying supplies to fix her pipe and wall, she runs into Neve. I looked it up. Neve, an old friend. Neve tells her that someone saw her the other night sleepwalking, but no harm was done. This explains why she woke up in the middle of a road. Lorna is one of the unfortunate women who are victimized by the Catholic Church. The media refers to the asylum where Lorna and the others were abused as Magdalene Laundries, because there were several of them. Neve invites her to meet with other survivors at her house the next day, but Lorna isn't interested. She's already given up hope of being reconciled with her daughter. The laundry used to operate in an exploitative way. Sisters and clergy members from the convent would snatch away newborn babies from the mothers to be sold for a profit to wealthy customers. All this was done under the guise of smearing these women as unstable or psychotic. Lorna carries out the repair work. She looks at the note from a mysterious woman who left her. So a woman came into her work and Lorna wasn't there, so she left a note to her boss. Her boss gives Lorna the note, and it reads, "I know what happened to your child." Lorna is shaken. She is traumatized by the memories of her time at the laundry, and there is a phone number on the back of the card. When she calls, Lorna does not get a reply. However, she receives a text from the number asking to meet her that night at a pub. In a brief flashback, we see how Lorna was sent away by her parents when they discovered she had an unwanted pregnancy. All of this was done against her will, which is the case with most women who suffered at these convents. Although Lorna waits for a long time, there is no sign of anyone. Her solitude is interrupted by Michael, who knows her from their school days together. Lorna doesn't recognize him and is startled. She misconstrues his casual remarks and attacks him. The night passes, and she wakes up the next morning at her house. Lorna descends the staircase and spots the unopened box in the red room. Unexpectedly, to her absolute horror, Lorna finds an unconscious old woman bent over the floor. When she suspects it is the woman who is supposed to meet her, Lorna calls the cell. Lorna calls the number that was left to her. And when the phone rings in the other room, her fears are confirmed. We turn our attention to Black Rock, Dublin, where D.S. Coleman Akandi is called to investigate a crime scene. Although he doesn't recognize the house, Akandi recalls the victim, Father Percy Sheehan. It looks like he died to a blow to the head, but the police aren't sure at this point. We learn that Sheehan looked after Akandi when he was a kid, even hanging a photo of his confirmation in his room. Akandi notices Sheehan's green car, the same one that Lorna was taken in the convent all those years ago, is missing. In the very next scene, we learn that the car is Neil Kilkenny, stuck away from the road, so it's like on the side of the road. Lorna goes to the meeting against her original plan. Anything to get out of the house, probably. She sees Neve talking to the others about a charity group, Eardrum, it looked like eardrum. Eardrum, who wants to lobby on behalf of the survivors to classify the Kilkenure convent as a Magdalene Laundry. The others in the group include Amy, Clements, Peggy, and Deirdre. Lorna suddenly walks into the meeting but isn't interested in sitting down. She asks if anyone else got a card like her, but no one else did. Lorna spots a wound on her forehead, which she doesn't recall getting, and rushes out. Akandi is sent to Kilkenure to investigate the missing car. Sergeant Aidan Massey, whom we saw earlier with the car, greets Akandi. He will be assisting the city detective with the investigation. Garda Connor Skelly, who has been waiting in the fields with the car since morning, finally gets off the hook when Akandi and Aidan arrive at the scene. The car is instructed to be towed away to the Garda's... so Garda is like the Irish... That's like their police. To the Garda's secure facility. Akandi insists on a door-to-door to gather more information about anything out of order the past 2 nights. And the first one they talk to is Amy. That is when Akandi learns that there was a laundry in Kilkenure as well, and that Sheehan was responsible for holding up local girls there. She gloats how happy she is when they tell him Sheehan is dead. When they leave the shop, Aidan reveals to Akandi that the state carried out an investigation a few years back and didn't find any evidence of a laundry in the town. Lorna learns from Siobhan, who works at the pub, that the old lady took her home the previous night. Lorna is distracted when she sees the green car being towed away and runs back to her house in a panic. When interviewing Peggy and Deirdre, Akandi learns about Lorna and what she did last year. Lorna broke into the convent grounds and desecrated the shrine of the Virgin Mary with an axe. Aidan quickly shoots down his suspicions and claims that she was just sleepwalking. Have you ever sleepwalked before?
I don't think I have. Not to where I like walked out the house or anything like that. But no, that's never been a problem with me.
Same. I don't know if I've ever known anyone to sleepwalk either.
Me either.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting kind of thing. I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine ever having to do that. Imagine ever doing that, I guess.
Yeah.
He also implies that Lorna isn't right in the head. Akandi visits her that night, but Lorna doesn't answer. She falls asleep waiting for him to leave and suddenly wakes up. But it is an instance of her sleepwalking. Lorna heads straight to the facility where the car is locked up. She breaks in and lights it on fire, only recognizing what she has done as she is leaving. It is also shown that Amy saw Lorna heading toward the car. Aidan and Akandi visit the shop the next morning to question Lorna. She pretends to draw a blank, and Aidan prevents his counterpart from pressing her for answers. While giving the finishing touches to a wedding dress, Lorna is reminded of the time when her newborn was taken from her her newborn was in her arms and then taken from her. The fabric triggers the memory, and she ends up destroying the dress. Lorna also realized that the woman in her house, who is now dead, was one of the nurses at the convent, but she cannot recall her name. To get rid of the body, Lorna makes a hole in one of the walls and buries her there. Thus, the woman in the wall.
Yep.
End of episode. I mean, we
were
pretty. I mean, like, there are some times where we watch the first episodes and like we're paying attention, but we're also like kind of maybe like on our phones. I'm kind of maybe like writing notes and stuff like that. But this was an episode where I had my phone down pretty much the whole time. I was very captivated by it. I was very into it. I mean, Ruth Wilson is awesome.
I love her.
She's such a great actress, and we both love her. And the cast overall is really great. The story is really interesting. The tone, the pacing, like it's all done very, very well. And it's only 6 episodes. And if you have Paramount Plus, I highly recommend giving this show a shot. It was really, I mean, like, it was very interesting. I'm actually now, after reading this plot summary, I really want to keep watching it.
Yeah.
And, so what did you think?
I really liked it, mostly because I'm always intrigued by a show that is of a different genre. I mean, this was obviously crime, mystery, drama, but I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we get a lot of that from UK shows or Irish shows, things from across the pond. I mean, it gave you a lot to take in, which means we have a lot to find out in the next 5 episodes. So I like that. I like being left going, oh my God, what's happening next, or their previews, like I do every time we watch Euphoria or Testaments. But
they do have previews for Euphoria. They do not have previews for the Testaments.
Which kills
Anna gets mad every time, especially the last night's episode.
Oh my God. So yes, I really liked it. I love Ruth Wilson. I was invested also because of her. I loved her in The Affair on Showtime. But yeah, I really liked it, and I thought it gave you a lot, but it moved really fast.
I always am impressed when, especially with the pilot. Obviously, this is our podcast is all about pilots and watching the first episode. I'm always impressed when we're given a lot of information, but we're still left wanting more.
Oh yeah,
I'm always impressed with that. I always feel like that's really hard to do. I always feel like a lot of times, especially with like a mystery, crime, thriller, we're not given a lot in the first episode, but then we're like, okay, so I guess we have to watch the second, third, and fourth episode to get interested in the show. Like, I feel that way a lot, and I'm always impressed. It's also with, I've given enough clues, so I can just say a show that we're doing later this month, How to Get to Heaven from Belfast.
Oh, yeah.
Where we got a lot of information, but we're still left wanting more.
Yes.
Such a great... The UK, Ireland, Europe in general is so good with so great with storytelling. They do it so differently than in North America. And I'm always really impressed with it. I'm always really excited when we do shows from the UK and from Ireland, from Europe in general. And because they just pace things differently. They're so great at storytelling. And I don't know why it's so different than America, but
I'm just wondering. I was about to say, because you said that, I just wonder if they're given more creative freedom. They don't have as many issues with curse words and sex, or not.
Quick reminder: Skins was on public television in the UK. So
I just wonder if they're just given more license to do whatever, and they're like, I mean, this could be real life. I mean, like we've said,
this is on BBC One. This is a network for the UK. This is a network show.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've talked enough. You think that wraps up this episode?
Yeah.
All right. That wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. We're also on Facebook and Threads. You can leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
All right. I have the Ireland flag, the car, the knife, the thread and the needle, any of the babies, any of the pregnant ladies, the phone for the texting, the beer for the pub, the box, the police, the emoji with the head bandage, the door, the sleep emojis, and finally, the fire. All right. Well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.